The great hall of the Galactic Council was alive with a storm of voices. Lights glowed from high ceilings, reflecting off polished crystal walls where the banners of 100 species hung. It was a place meant for peace, where disputes were solved through words, where threats of war never dared to enter. For centuries, the council chamber had stood as the heart of galactic order, and all who entered understood its power. But on this day, fear and disbelief filled the air. Every delegate, every ambassador, every counselor sat in stunned silence after a single word had been spoken by the new species called humans. The word was short, simple, and absolute: no. The shock spread like fire. Never before had a species rejected the council so openly. Never before had anyone dared to stand against the will of the united galaxy. The Eldari, with their long robes of silver, shifted uneasily in their seats. Their people were masters of law and history, and they believed no race could resist the weight of tradition. Yet here were the humans, defying all tradition with one word. The Vern, fat merchants with jeweled hands, whispered nervously to one another. For them, peace meant trade, and trade meant profit. They feared what this refusal could mean for their wealth. No new markets, no easy agreements, no predictable business. Only uncertainty, and perhaps even ruin. The Kreks, reptilian warriors, whose empire once thrived on conquest, bared their fangs in confusion. They had been forced into the council's rule generations ago. They could not understand how this small young species had the courage to do what even the Kreks had not dared. Across the chamber, 100 other species reacted the same, some angry, some frightened, some deeply unsettled. Their voices rose until the hall shook with noise. "Unthinkable!" cried the Eldari delegate. "Foolish children!" shouted a Vern merchant. "They dare reject us?" hissed a Krex warlord. For a moment, the galaxy itself seemed to tremble inside that chamber. At the center, the council speaker, a being older than many suns, raised its glowing hands for silence. Slowly, the voices died down, though the fear remained. The speaker's voice was calm, but heavy with worry. "Never has this hall heard such words. Humanity has refused us. Humanity has rejected diplomacy." The sentence echoed across the chamber. Many species exchanged glances, unable to believe it. Refusing the council meant refusing order. It meant turning away from the safety of countless worlds. It meant standing alone against powers that had ruled the stars for ages. No one had ever dared. Yet the humans had dared. Why? That question burned in the minds of every delegate present. The humans had only been among the stars for a short time. Their fleets were growing, but they were not vast. Their colonies were spreading, but they were not countless. Their strength was real, but compared to the older empires, it was still young. And yet, they looked at the council with steady eyes and chose defiance over submission. Some whispered that it was ignorance, that humans did not understand the dangers they faced. Others whispered that it was arrogance, that humans thought too highly of themselves. But beneath all the anger and confusion, a deeper fear spread. What if it was not ignorance? What if it was not arrogance? What if humans simply could not be controlled? The chamber felt colder that day. Old powers who once thought themselves unshakable began to doubt. The unity of the council, built on countless treaties, seemed suddenly fragile. One word from a new species had cracked it, and in that silence every delegate knew a truth they did not want to say aloud. If humanity could stand so boldly now, while still young among the stars, then what would they be when they grew stronger? The council was in shock. The galaxy was trembling, and the humans had only just begun to speak. The council chamber did not return to calm after the humans' refusal. Even after the speaker dismissed the gathering, the great hall remained filled with anxious whispers and tense arguments. Delegates hurried back to their ships, their eyes filled with worry. Rumors spread faster than light across the stations and colonies that surrounded the capital world. Never before had the galaxy seen something like this. No species had ever rejected the council outright. Some had hesitated, some had demanded changes, some had even delayed their entry for centuries, but in the end, all had bowed to the order of diplomacy. To resist the council was to resist the galaxy itself. Yet the humans had resisted with no hesitation. Among the Eldari, fear spread like a shadow. They were a people of wisdom and records, keepers of every treaty and law signed for thousands of years. For them, history was a weapon. They knew how easily species bent under the weight of it. But humanity had shrugged it off as if those laws meant nothing. The Eldari counselors sat in their silver halls whispering of doom. If one race refuses, others may follow. The chain of law will break. Their voices were calm, but beneath them was dread. The Vern merchants were louder in their fear. On their homeworld of shining towers and endless markets, traders screamed at one another across the grand exchanges. If the humans would not join the council, then trade with them would be unpredictable, dangerous, perhaps even impossible. No contracts could bind them, no treaties could guarantee profit. The Vern loved order because order gave them wealth, but humanity had just torn a hole through that order. What if others copy them? One merchant asked. What if trade becomes chaos? The question spread like fire and no one had an answer. The Kreks, once conquerors now forced into peace, reacted differently. In their warrior temples the generals gathered. Their scales glistened in the light of burning torches as they spoke in low, rumbling voices. Some were angry, believing humanity to be foolish. They are small. They are weak. They will be crushed. Others, however, spoke with unease. They had seen the human fleets. They had read the reports of human training, and they remembered their own defeat when they had resisted the council centuries ago. They have a fire, one old Kreks general whispered. A fire I have not seen in many ages. If war comes, they will not fall quickly. Across the galaxy, the reaction was the same. Fear, doubt, confusion. Humanity had not fired a single weapon, yet their refusal struck harder than any fleet could. It was a challenge to the entire system that had kept the stars in balance. If humans could say no, then the council was not unbreakable. On distant colonies, ordinary people of other races whispered about humanity. Stories grew wild. Some said, humans could breathe poison and survive. Others said their warships were powered by forbidden energy. And still others swore that humans could not die easily. Fear twisted into legend, and legend grew into panic. In the council itself, the leaders met in secret. Their voices, once proud and united, were sharp and divided. Some demanded force. Strike now, while they are still small. Crush this rebellion before it grows. Others urged patience. Do not anger them, do not push them into war, find another way. The chamber that once echoed with certainty now shook with disagreement. Yet beneath all the debate, one truth haunted them all. The humans had not hesitated when they said no. They had not begged for time. They had not asked for compromise. Their refusal was pure, clear, and unshakable. That was what terrified the galaxy most. For the first time in centuries, the council felt powerless. Their laws, their wealth, their armies, all the tools that had kept order, meant nothing against a species that refused to bend. And as night fell on the capital world, the stars outside the council chamber seemed darker, as if the galaxy itself feared what the humans would do next. The Galactic Council did not wait long before demanding an answer from Earth. They could not allow silence. If humans refused once and then disappeared into their corner of the stars, it would leave every other race with questions. No, the Council wanted a reason. They wanted to hear from humanity's own voice why they rejected the ancient system of diplomacy. So the summons was sent. A secure channel opened across light years, reaching Earth's capital. Every delegate in the council chamber leaned forward as the hologram flickered to life. At the center of the great hall, a human appeared. He was not dressed in rich robes like the Eldari. He wore no jewels like the Vern, no armor like the Kreks. Instead, he stood in simple dark clothing, straight-backed, with steady eyes that swept across the room. His presence was calm, but his gaze carried the weight of a storm. The speaker addressed him first. Human representative, the council demands clarity. Why do you reject our diplomacy when every species before you has accepted peace? Do you not understand what you risk? Do you not fear isolation? The human's voice was firm, carrying across the chamber without hesitation. We understand perfectly. But your diplomacy is not peace. It is control. The chamber erupted in outrage. Dozens of species shouted at once, their voices mixing into chaos. The Eldari demanded silence, the Vern cried insults, the Krex hissed with rage. But the human did not flinch. He waited calmly, and when the speaker raised its glowing hands for order, he spoke again. Your treaties are chains. You call them protection, but they are submission. You tell us peace comes when we bow, when we give up freedom, when we obey rules we did not write. You ask us to surrender. Dare before we even begin. Humanity will not kneel. Not now. Not ever. The words struck the chamber like a thunderclap. Silence fell so deep that the hum of the hologram filled the air. Delegates stared at the human, some with fury, some with disbelief, others with something far worse, fear. One Eldari elder rose slowly, his silver robe shimmering in the light. You speak of freedom, but you are reckless children. Alone you cannot survive the galaxy. You need order, you need guidance, or you will fall into chaos. Do you not see that we offer you peace? The human's expression softened for the first time, but his eyes never wavered. We know chaos better than any of you. On our world we survived fire and ice, storms and plagues. We fought wars so terrible that we almost ended ourselves. We know the price of peace, because we built it with our own blood. That is why we will not accept a peace that is forced upon us. A peace that demands we bow is not peace. It is slavery. The chamber shivered with his words. Some delegates whispered in awe, others in fear. The Krex warlord who had once fought against the council lowered his gaze as if remembering his own people's defeat. The human continued, his voice like steel wrapped in fire. We are not here to conquer. We are not here to destroy. But we will not trade freedom for safety. If you want to meet us as equals, then we will speak. But if you want us to kneel, then we will walk our own path, even if we walk it alone. For a long moment, no one spoke. The council chamber, usually alive with endless argument, was drowned in silence. The humans had spoken, and their words carried no hesitation, no doubt, no weakness. Finally, the speaker lowered its glowing hands. Its voice was heavy, almost trembling. So this is humanity's choice: freedom over peace, defiance over unity. The human's hologram flickered, but his final words rang clear before he vanished. Not defiance, strength, remember that. When the light faded, the delegates sat frozen. Many could not believe what they had heard, but deep inside they knew the truth. The humans were serious, and that truth terrified the galaxy. The council chamber did not return to peace after the human envoy vanished. The echo of his words lingered in the air, heavy and sharp like a blade pressed against the throats of every delegate. For a long time, no one moved. Then slowly, the voices began to rise again. Nervous, angry, frightened. They will bring war, one Eldari whispered. They are reckless, a Vern merchant shouted. They must be dealt with, hissed a Krex general. Soon the chamber was drowned in noise. Each species spoke over the other, their words mixing into a storm of fear. It was no longer the calm, orderly debate the council was known for. This was panic. The speaker tried to restore order, but even its glowing presence could not calm the gathering. For the first time in centuries, the council felt powerless. Humanity's rejection had shaken them at their core. Their diplomacy had always worked. It had tamed empires, silenced rebels, and even turned warlords into politicians. Yet, with a single refusal, humanity had broken the illusion of control. In private halls after the meeting, groups of delegates gathered in secrecy. Whispers filled the golden corridors of the council capital. The Eldari argued for punishment. We cannot allow one race to destroy the chain of law, their elder said, his voice cold. If we do nothing, the very foundation of order will collapse. They demanded strict sanctions. No trade, no recognition, no shared technology. To them, isolation was a weapon sharper than any blade. The Vern, however, thought differently. Sanctions will hurt us more than them, their merchants, cried. "The humans are not bound by trade yet, but we are. They will simply build their own markets. We will lose billions." Their fear was not of law, but of profit slipping away. The Kreks spoke last, their voices deep and uneasy. "Sanctions, laws, threats, none of these will bend the humans. They are too proud, too strong-willed. If we push them, they will not yield, they will fight." That word, fight, hung in the air like poison. No one wanted to speak of war. Not truly. War was the shadow that haunted every council world. It was the reason diplomacy existed, the reason the council had been built. To think of war returning, to imagine fleets burning across the stars again, it filled every heart with dread. And yet the possibility could not be denied. Reports were already spreading of human fleets training without pause, their colonies expanding at a relentless pace. Scouts whispered of ships larger than anyone expected, of weapons being tested on the edge of Terran space. The humans did not move like a people afraid of isolation. They moved like a people preparing for something greater. One Vern merchant asked the question that no one wanted to answer. What if they are not bluffing? What if they mean every word they said? Silence followed, because deep down, every delegate knew the truth. The humans had not spoken like liars. They had spoken like a species that believed every word. The panic spread beyond the council chamber. On distant worlds, common citizens heard rumors of human defiance. Some were angry, others afraid, and some secretly admired the boldness. Young races whispered of following the same path, of rejecting the old system. The very unity of the galaxy was beginning to tremble. Back on the council capital, the speaker sat alone in the great chamber, staring at the empty floor where the human envoy had stood. For centuries, the council's diplomacy had been enough to keep order. But now, for the first time, words had failed. The speaker's voice was quiet, almost like a prayer. If words cannot bind them, what will? No answer came. Only the cold silence of a galaxy that suddenly felt much more fragile. The council was restless. After the failure of diplomacy, after humanity's refusal, the galaxy's leaders grew desperate for answers. They wanted to understand these strange newcomers who spoke of freedom as if it were worth more than safety. And so, they turned to the only place they had not yet searched: human history. Teams of Eldari scholars were sent to gather records. Vern merchants hired spies to collect stories. Even the Kreks generals, proud and suspicious, studied old human transmissions. Across the stars, archives of Earth were opened, and the truth of humanity began to unfold. What they found shocked them. At first they read of wars, endless wars. Not against aliens or invaders, but against themselves. Humans had fought each other for land, for faith, for power, for survival. Their history was soaked in battles, sieges, and revolutions. To other species, such violence was madness. Most civilizations had only known a few great conflicts before turning to peace. But humans had waged thousands of wars across thousands of years. The Eldari scholars trembled as they read. How could a species survive this much bloodshed? They asked one another. Yet, the more they studied, the stranger it became. Humans had not only survived war, they had grown from it. Each time they fell, they rose stronger. Empires collapsed, but nations were rebuilt. Cities burned, but new ones rose from the ashes. Humanity refused to vanish. One Kreks general slammed, his clawed hand against the table after reading the reports. His voice was heavy with fear. They are forged by war. Where we avoid conflict, they are shaped by it. They do not fear it as we do. His words spread like fire through the military halls of the council. But it was not only war. The scholars found records of famine and disease, disasters of fire, water, and ice. Entire continents had suffered, yet humans endured. They adapted, changed, and fought for survival against the very planet that gave them life. To the council, it was horrifying. To humans, it was simply history. The Vern merchants shook with unease as they studied human culture. They do not give up when trade fails, one whispered. When food runs out, they hunt. When their homes fall, they build again. They find ways where no profit exists. How do you control such a people? For the first time, the merchants who believed wealth could sway anyone admitted fear. Even worse were the stories of sacrifice. Time after time, humans gave their lives for others, for family, for comrades, for strangers. Council races often clung to survival above all else, but humans seemed willing to throw themselves into danger for something greater. It was not logical, it was not safe, but it was powerful. The more they learned, the more unsettled the council became. They began to see a pattern. Humanity was not reckless children. They were survivors of the harshest trials a species could face. Where others avoided pain, humanity endured it. Where others feared death, humanity defied it. Late one night, in the private archives of the council, the speaker listened to a recording of a human historian speaking about Earth's past. The historian's voice was calm, but every word was filled with weight. We are the children of struggle. Our history is written in fire and blood. But from that fire we learned courage. From that blood we learned unity. We do not seek war, but we do not fear it. We do not seek death, but we do not run from it. This is who we are. We are human. The speaker's hands trembled as the words ended. The chamber was silent, yet the echo of that message seemed louder than any battle cry. The truth was clear now. The humans had not refused diplomacy out of ignorance. They had refused because they had no need for it. They did not fear war because war had raised them. They did not cling to peace because they had built peace with their own scars. And in that realization, terror spread through the council. They were not facing a naive young race. They were facing a species that had survived everything the galaxy feared most, and had grown stronger because of it. The council could no longer sit in silence. After studying human history, after learning of their endless survival, fear grew, like a storm across every hall of power. But fear alone could not guide the galaxy. Something had to be done. So the speaker called for one final summit. It was said to be the most important gathering in centuries. Delegates from every race filled the chamber once more. Their faces carried exhaustion, worry, and anger. The humans had to be swayed. If not, the galaxy's fragile order might collapse. The Eldari proposed the first idea. Their elder rose, his silver robes glowing faintly in the crystal lights. "We will give them equal votes in the council," he said. "No species has ever been offered such a gift at their first entry. They will not refuse a chance at true equality." His voice carried authority, but his eyes betrayed doubt. The Vern merchants quickly added their promises. "We will open our richest trade routes to them. Gold, jewels, spices, energy crystals, whatever they desire, it will be theirs. We will make them wealthier than any young race in history." Their voices shook because deep down they feared humans cared little for profit. Even the Kreks, once warriors, now spoke with unease. "We will share weapons," one general growled. "We will give them fleets and training. We will treat them, not as children, but as allies. If they want strength, we will offer it." The words were hard, but the fear in his tone could not be hidden. The chamber agreed at last. This would be their final offer: equal power, endless wealth, and unmatched weapons. No race in all of history could have rejected such a deal. Surely, the humans would not either. When the summons was sent, the humans answered. Once again, a hologram appeared at the heart of the chamber. It was the same envoy as before, calm and steady in his simple clothing. His expression was unreadable as the speaker listed the offers one by one. When the speaker finished, silence followed. Every delegate leaned forward, waiting. Surely this time the humans would bend, but the envoy only shook his head slowly. His voice was calm, but his words cut like a blade. "You still do not understand us." The chamber tensed. The envoy's eyes swept across the crowd, filled not with arrogance but with a quiet strength. "You offer us power, but we already have power. You offer us wealth, but we do not fight for gold. You offer us weapons, But we already know how to build our own. What we ask for, you cannot give. Freedom without chains. An Eldari elder rose, his voice breaking with desperation. But you will break the order of the galaxy. Without diplomacy, there will be chaos. Do you not see? You risk everything. Kirur. Human's voice softened, but his tone was unshakable. Peace without freedom is not peace. Safety bought by submission is not safety. We will not trade the soul of our people for your promises. The chamber exploded with voices again, some begging, some furious, some afraid, but the envoy did not falter. We will walk beside you as equals if you wish. But if you demand our obedience, then we walk alone. We will not kneel. And with that, the hologram vanished once more. The council was left in chaos. Some species shouted for war, others for patience. Some whispered of abandoning the council entirely, following the human example. The unity of the galaxy, so carefully guarded for centuries, was now cracking apart. The speaker sat in silence, its glowing hands trembling. The humans had refused their final, greatest offer. Nothing remained to control them, not law, not wealth, not strength. The galaxy had reached its breaking point. The council chamber had never been so divided. After humanity's second refusal, the great hall echoed with fear and anger. Voices clashed like blades. Some cried for war. Others begged for patience. Some even whispered of abandoning the council itself, following humanity's example. The very order of the galaxy trembled. For centuries, the council had been unshakable. Its laws bound the stars. Its diplomacy tamed empires. But now, one young race had torn through that illusion. Humanity had not shouted, had not threatened, had not begged. They had simply refused. And the weight of that refusal was heavier than any fleet. The Eldari were in despair. They had built their pride on law, on the unbroken chain of history. Yet that chain now hung broken before them. Their elder sat with lowered eyes, his silver robes dim, as if all his wisdom had turned to dust. The Vern merchants were pale with fear. Their towers of wealth suddenly seemed fragile. If other races followed the humans, trade would collapse. Profit would vanish. Their world of glittering markets would become nothing but empty halls. The Krex generals were restless, their claws scraping against the stone tables. They remembered their own defeat when they had resisted the council long ago. They remembered how they had bowed in the end. And now they looked at humanity and saw a people who would never bow. News spread across the galaxy faster than light. On distant colonies, whispers grew into shouts. If the humans can say no, why can't we? Small races, long bent under the council's will, began to dream of freedom. Old wounds reopened, old rebellion stirred. The unity of the stars cracked like glass beneath too much weight. The speaker called for silence one last time. Its glowing hands trembled as it addressed the chamber. We must decide. Do we force them? Do we fight them? Or do we let them stand apart? No one answered at first. The question was too heavy. At last, a Krex general spoke, his deep voice carrying across the chamber. If we fight them, we will bleed. They are not like us. They do not fear war. An Eldari elder added in a weak voice. If we force them, others will see. They will rise against us. The chain will break completely. Even the Vern, greedy for profit, whispered in defeat. If we deny them, we will lose everything. But if we accept them, the council will never be the same. The silence that followed was suffocating. The truth hung in the air, unspoken but undeniable. The galaxy had changed. The council was no longer unshakable, and humanity had made it so. Far away on Earth, the humans continued their work. Fleets were built, soldiers trained, colonies grew. They did not slow, they did not bend, they did not wait for permission. To them, the council's fear was irrelevant. They were not driven by power or greed, but by something deeper, freedom, carved into their very soul. The speaker lowered its glowing hands at last. Its voice was heavy, almost broken. We cannot control them. We cannot buy them. We cannot break them. Humanity will stand apart. A chill spread through the chamber. For the first time in centuries, the Council had admitted defeat, not on the battlefield, but in the very heart of diplomacy. And so, the galaxy trembled. Not because humans had declared war, not because they had conquered a single world, but because they had shown that fear of the Council was not eternal. In the hearts of many, a dangerous thought grew. If the humans can stand free, why not us? That was humanity's final victory. Not with weapons, not with wealth, not with treaties, but with defiance that could not be silenced. The Council had sought to bind them, but humanity had chosen a different path. And now, every star in the galaxy burned a little brighter with the possibility of freedom. The galaxy would never be the same again.